What's up? It's me, Marty1983, and you are in the Nerd Nest. Well, we're halfway through October, a little more than halfway, and Halloween is fast approaching. I plan to do a quick top 10 video before then, if I'm lucky, you know me. Anyway, you also may have noticed I've changed my username from Marty Yitram to Marty1983. Nobody could pronounce my old name. It was supposed to be a palindrome, but it never caught on, it didn't work, so whatever. Now I'm Marty1983, but this is still the Nerd Nest. We think. I don't know, you got all those anime posters up there? Anime posters, woo! Yep, this is still the Nerd Nest, more or less. I've gotta get a tripod, because I keep holding my camera up anyway. Okay, enough babbling, enough being stupid. It's time for another episode of 15-minute game show reviews. Now in this edition, I'll be talking about a show from the 1970s and 80s that saw success in the US and especially in Canada. It actually deserved a longer run than it got, in my opinion. It was also the product of one of the most successful game show producers and creators. It's the game Edward Nygma, aka the Riddler, would be proud of.
Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat?
It's time to stand up and yell, Jackpot!
Today, 16 players are here trying to win $25,000. Every one of them holds a different riddle, but only one of them holds the jackpot riddle. You never know when someone will stand up and yell,
Jackpot!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Jeff Edwards.
Almost lost you there. All right, thank you very much. Hi, Diane. Well, this should be a great show. We're 16 players still with us on Thursday.
An interesting game show from the mid-1970s that saw two revivals in the 1980s in two different countries. Jackpot had one contestant going up against a gallery of other players trying to answer riddles to win thousands of dollars in cash and prizes, and it was the brainchild of Bob Stewart, a former Goodson Todman staffer who gave us the original Price is Right and Password, who would later strike out on his own and created the long-running 9-time Emmy winner, The Pyramid. Jackpot, the original version, made its debut on NBC on January 7th, 1974 as part of their daytime schedule and ran until September 26, 1975. The show was taped at NBC's Rockefeller Center headquarters in New York City. In 1985, Stewart teamed up with the American cable network USA and the Global Television Network in Canada for a revival that aired in both countries. This edition of Jackpot aired from September 30th, 1985 until December 30th, 1988, and was produced in Toronto. After the Canadian-produced Jackpot ended, Stewart developed another series of the show for American syndication, this time based in Los Angeles, and adding an exclamation point to the title. Jackpot debuted on September 18th, 1989, ending on March 16th, 1990, after its syndicator, Palladium Entertainment, went out of business. The host for the original version on NBC, as well as the 1989 revival, was game show hosting veteran Jeff Edwards. Born in Westfield, New Jersey in 1931, Jeff began his career while in college, working at a radio station in Albany, New York. By the late 1950s, Jeff headed west, landing his first job at station KFMB AM in San Diego. Jeff was also a news reporter and witnessed Jack Ruby's assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald on November 24, 1963, 2 days after the latter's alleged assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Jeff was ultimately hired at KMPC in Los Angeles starting in 1968, and he also worked at KFI, and in later years was a morning DJ with KSUR, now KKGO in Los Angeles. During that time, Jeff tried his hand at acting, appearing on I Dream of Jeannie, That Girl, and Petticoat Junction. He would also guest star on the later sitcoms Different Strokes and Small Wonder. Jeff appeared on the Bobby Darin Show as the straight man to singer Bobby Darin. After that show ended, he began his game show hosting career in earnest, which lasted more than 2 decades. Jeff's first game show was Hollywood's Talking on CBS from March to June of 1973. In September of that year, he became a household name when he was picked by Chuck Barris to host The New Treasure Hunt, a role he would hold for 4 years until 1977, as well as a revival in 1981-82. Other game shows Jeff hosted include Shoot for the Stars, Chain Reaction, both as a sub for Bill Cullen in the original 1980 version, and as a host of a later revival in Canada, no less, Play the Percentages, and Starcade, which made him a fan of video games. He also subbed for Monty Hall on the all-new Let's Make a Deal in 1985 when Monty was sick for a week. His longest-running series was The Big Spin for the California Lottery, which he hosted from November of 1985 until his retirement from television in 1994. In his later years, Jeff was semi-retired and lived in California. He traveled extensively, hosting traveling programs on both radio and television, along with writing extensively about travel. Jeff also appeared as a guest on GSN Live on May 16, 2008, in one of his last TV appearances. Jeff Edwards died from complications from pneumonia in March of 2014, less than 1 month after his 83rd birthday. The host of the Canadian version was Mike Darrow. Darrow was born in 1933 and began as a radio DJ on CFRN in Edmonton and at CHUM in Toronto. His work in American television was as the host of the original Dream House on ABC in 1969 and 70, and the revival of the infamous $64,000 question, the $128,000 question, for its first season in 1976-77. He was also the announcer for NBC's The Who, What, and Where game in the 1960s, and he subbed as announcer on Wink Martindale's version of Tic-Tac-Dough in 1980. His work in Canadian television, in addition to Jackpot, includes the music series Club 6 and the game show Going Places from 1973 to 1980. He later hosted Toronto-based segments of the MDA Labor Day Telethon on the Global Television Network from 1977 until the early 90s, as well as emceeing at the annual ACT Telerama for CFRN TV in Edmonton. Mike Darrow died at age 63 in 1996. The poet laureate of television, Nipsey Russell, hosted the 1984 pilot for CBS, which I will cover in the video later. The show's announcer for its run on NBC was the longtime voice of the Peacock Network, Don Pardo, who is best known for being the announcer on the original Jeopardy! And is especially known for NBC's Saturday Night Live from its premiere in 1975 until just before his death in August 2014 at the age of 96. Fellow NBC voiceover man Wayne Howell filled in for the final weeks of the show's original run in 1975. Current Jeopardy! Announcer Johnny Gilbert announced for the 1984 pilot and the 1989-90 revival, splitting the duties for the latter series with John Harlan. The announcer for the Canadian version was primarily Ken Ryan, who later announced on Bumper Stumpers, another USA Global co-production. The game was played like this. While there were some tweaks during the show's different runs, the rules were more or less the same throughout. 16 contestants competed for an entire week, with one designated as King or Queen of the Hill, depending on their gender, save for the original 1974 series where Jeff called that player the Expert. That player stood at a circular podium at stage left, while the other 15 contestants, numbered 1 through 15, were seated in 3-tiered bleachers, 4 on the bottom row, 5 in the middle, and 6 on the top, and they were all given wallets containing riddles. Here's an example of a riddle.
For $160, this is my riddle. I sound like a soap opera, but I'm actually a breakfast food. What am I called?
I sound like a soap opera, but I'm actually a breakfast food. What am I called?
Cereal?
Yes, Mary! Boy!
The King or Queen of the Hill selected one number at a time, and the contestant in that seat opened their wallet and they asked the riddle inside. The King or Queen retained control of the game on a correct answer. If they missed, however, they switched places with the riddle giver, and that player became the new King or Queen of the Hill. Most of the riddles had a dollar value attached to them, which was added to the jackpot. One of the contestants held a jackpot riddle, which allowed them to split the jackpot with the King or Queen of the Hill if answered correctly. A secondary objective involved a super jackpot, a separate and much larger cash award. At the start of each new game, a 3-digit target number that always ended in 0 or 5 was chosen at random by a computer. If the last 3 digits of the jackpot total matched the target number at any time, the king or queen could split the super jackpot with the chosen contestant by correctly answering one riddle, either the one held by the contestant or a special one asked by the host, depending on the version. Depending on the rules or the situation, the king or queen could ask the jackpot riddle holder to be seated and continue playing the game with the intent of finding a bonus, adding more money to the jackpot, and or playing for the super jackpot. All contestants throughout the week kept their accumulated cash and prizes, and they left the show at the end of the week. If a game was in progress when time ran out on a Friday episode, the king or queen chose one more contestant and played the riddle for the jackpot at that point. There were also several different riddles throughout the show's different runs. A correct answer to any of these riddles would result in the following. All versions of the show had a prize riddle, which awarded a prize to the king or queen of the hill if they selected it and the riddle was solved. The NBC version had a super jackpot wild card, which gave the riddle giver and the king or queen of the hill a chance to win the super jackpot, but it left the jackpot unchanged. The USA Global version, as well as the 1989 revival, had what was called Return Trip, which allowed both the riddle giver and the king or queen of the hill to return on the following week of shows. The 1989 revival had 2 special riddles that appeared only on that version. One was called Double Dollars, which would double the money in the jackpot if the riddle was solved. The other was called Target Match, which would put enough money in the jackpot to match its last 3 digits to the target number, and those 2 players would then be given a chance to win the super jackpot. Now, about the differences between the 3 versions. On the original NBC version, riddles would range in value from $5 to $200 in multiples of 5, and target numbers could go no higher than 995. After the selection of a target number, a multiplier ranging from 5 to 50 was chosen at random, although 15 and 20 were twice as likely to appear, and this would be multiplied with the target number to determine the super jackpot. Now, if the target number was 995 and the multiplier was 50, the show cheated with the math a little bit, and the super jackpot was automatically bumped up to $50,000. The super jackpot could be played for in one of 2 ways in this version. Initially, if the expert solved a riddle whose value caused the last 3 digits of the jackpot to match the target number, he or she and the riddler split the super jackpot. Later, a correct answer in this situation led to a second riddle asked by Jeff with the super jackpot at stake. Originally, the contestant who answered the most riddles in the week also won a new car. This was later changed to awarding a car to anyone who answered all 15 riddles in a single game. After a week-long experiment in February of 1974, where it was called the Valentine Riddle, most games had a double bonus riddle, which, if answered correctly, won the 2 contestants involved a trip, usually to somewhere in Mexico or to the Caribbean. Beginning on June 30th, 1975, thanks to meddling by NBC's daytime president, Lin Bo-Lin, the format was altered for the last 13 weeks of the run. First off, the target number and the multiplier were both dropped, and the super jackpot was established at random to a value between $2,000 and $10,000 in increments of 100. Worst of all, riddles were replaced with straight yes, no, true, false, or multiple choice general knowledge questions. When the jackpot question was found, the expert could either try to answer it or go for the super jackpot by answering all remaining questions in the game, including the jackpot question. If the contestant missed any of the remaining questions, the jackpot was reset to 0 and a new super jackpot was established. In the event that the jackpot question was the last one found, the super jackpot was thrown out. In the 1984 pilot, there was no target number or a super jackpot, unlike all versions before and after. The jackpot actually started at $150, with that amount going into it for each riddle solved. If the jackpot riddle was found, but it wasn't attempted immediately, the value for each correct answer would be doubled to $300. If the jackpot riddle wasn't found until the last contestant, $5,000 was automatically added to the jackpot as a bonus. When the jackpot riddle was solved, the winning king or queen of the hill and the riddle giver played a new bonus round called Riddlegrams, which was played similar to another Stewart-produced show, Shoot for the Stars. 2 clues were shown. The clues, when answered in the order they were read, made a 2-word phrase. For example, in the sample scene here, squashed spuds would be mashed potatoes. One contestant guessed the first half of the phrase, and the other contestant guessed the second half. If either contestant made a mistake, Nipsey would tell them so, and they would try to guess again, or the team could pass without any penalty. The team split $100 for each phrase solved, and if the contestants could solve all 7 riddlegrams in 60 seconds, one for each letter in the word jackpot, they split $5,000. This was the only version of Jackpot that had a bonus round. Although CBS didn't pick up this version, it was used with slight changes on the Welsh version in the 1990s. Now, on the Canadian version of the show, all prizes were paid in Canadian dollars. The riddles and the target number returned, but there was no multiplier. The super jackpot was now random, ranging from $4,000 to $9,900 in increments of 100. There was also no super jackpot riddle in this series. Instead, if a riddle was worth enough to cause a target match, it allowed both contestants to split the super jackpot and left the king or queen of the hill in control of the game if it was answered correctly. For each game, the jackpot also started at $100, and riddles were valued anywhere from $50 to $300, again in increments of 5. Also, if the jackpot riddle was not found until the last contestant, an extra $1,000 was added to the jackpot. Once the jackpot riddle was found and attempted, the contestant holding it traded places with the king or queen, regardless of the outcome. Starting in Season 2 of the Canadian version, any contestant who answered all 15 riddles without a miss won a new car. Also added was a $10,000 Riddler contest in which the contestant who answered the most riddles correctly in a single week over a period of 10 weeks won a bonus of $10,000, with the tied contestants splitting the money. A similar contest was held during the final 6 weeks of the second season, awarding a vacation package and $1,000 in cash to the contestant with the most correct answers in a single week. The final season featured a $50,000 riddle contest. All contestants who found and answered one of the designated riddles, which were considerably more difficult than the others used on the show, won equal shares of a $50,000 cash prize at the end of the season/series. Finally, in the 1989-90 syndicated version, the value of the riddle was now only added to the jackpot if the riddle was solved correctly. In addition, the super jackpot riddle returned, but now either the king or queen of the hill or the riddle giver who asked that riddle that brought the jackpot amount to the target number was allowed to guess. The riddle giver made a guess first, and if they missed, the king or queen made a guess themselves. This was later changed to having only one correct answer accepted from the first contestant to speak up. If either contestant was correct, they both split the super jackpot. Also, if the king or queen answered all 15 riddles without a miss, $1,000 was added to the jackpot, like on the Canadian version. Finally, super jackpots on this version ranged from $10,000 to $25,000 in $500 increments, and riddles ranged from $50 to $200, once again in increments of 5. And that is how Jackpot was played. Now we're going to give it something you both are and you earn in school. What is the answer? A grade. Jackpot was a pretty interesting take on game shows. Most shows at the time had players either answering trivia questions or trying to solve word puzzles or trying to guess the price of items, among other things. Solving riddles was a fresh take, and offering thousands of dollars in cash and prizes was just a little icing on the cake. Well, you could buy a lot of icing with it. I honestly can't find many faults with this show, though the riddles can be a little bit corny. But that's okay, sometimes a little corn is good now and then, especially if you can win a lot of money because of it. The show was commissioned in 1974 by NBC's head of daytime programming, Lynn Bolen, whom Diana Christensen, Faye Dunaway's character in the movie Network, which I recommend you watch, is said to have been modeled on, though Bolen disputed this. She removed the original Jeopardy, which had been on NBC for 8 years at 11 a.m. Eastern by that point, back half an hour, and placed Jackpot in that time slot, replacing the Who, What, or Where game in hopes of drawing in the more traditional female audience. The breakout popularity of CBS's youth-oriented soap opera, The Young and the Restless, led to an erosion of Jeopardy's audience, and the new show inherited the ratings problems. Still, Jackpot managed to earn some respectable ratings throughout 1974, and at one point looked to be more promising than its sister show, The $10,000 Pyramid, during its final month on CBS. Of course, it later moved to ABC that May, where it became a huge hit. By early 1975, however, The Young and the Restless broke into the top 10 in the daytime ratings. In reaction to the show's slumping ratings, Boland decided to revamp Jackpot by making use of a focus group, a then new audience analysis technique. Jeff stated that Boland's focus group participants didn't care for the show's riddles format. Boland then accepted this judgment and, in a move that would even piss off the Riddler, gave Bob Stewart an ultimatum. Replace the riddles with a straightforward Q&A format or the show is going to be canceled. In addition, Jeff was told not to question this decision or he would be replaced as host. The new format went into effect on June 30th, 1975. In a later interview with game show historian and producer Adam Nedeff on his website, Jeff mentioned the damage Boland's forced change/sabotage did to Jackpot, saying, quote, "She did a lot of damage. She killed it. Just killed it. She killed Jackpot. We worked the first couple of shows under the new format, and then we went outside and sat on a fire escape. I remember talking to producer Bob Stewart about it up there and saying, we're finished. The whole fun of the show disappeared."
Crazy bitch.
Needless to say, audiences felt the same way, as Jackpot just became another quiz show. The ratings tanked, and they never recovered. On July 7th, NBC moved the show to 12:30, but now it faced much stronger competition in the form of Search for Tomorrow on CBS and All My Children on ABC, the latter already a big hit with younger audiences. That was it, and Jackpot ended its 21-month run on September 26, 1975. Jeff got the last laugh, though, as he ripped off one of the signs from the set and gave it to an audience member as a souvenir to raucous applause on the last episode as kind of a middle finger to Lynn Boland. Once again, this proves the old adage true. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Of course, Jackpot would not go down easily. Nearly a decade later, Bob Stewart tried to sell a revival to CBS in 1984, hosted by Nipsey Russell. Although that show didn't sell, he eventually brought it back in Canada on the Global TV network hosted by Toronto native Mike Darrow, and it simultaneously aired on the USA network here in the States, where production was cheaper due to a then weaker Canadian dollar, and it ran for 3 years. In 1989, the show came back in US syndication with Jeff Edwards returning as host. However, Jackpot again met its demise before the end of a full season. This time it was not because of low ratings, but because of its distributor, Palladium Entertainment, having serious financial problems. As a ploy to try to raise cash quick, the company forced the staff to record over 10 episodes per day for a period of over 2 weeks. Under normal circumstances, half-hour weekday strips taped only 3 to 5 shows a day, depending on the studio's schedule. On March 16, 1990, Palladium shuttered its operations after declaring bankruptcy, and the remaining stations pulled Jackpot from their schedules immediately. Next time, you gotta find a distributor that's on better financial footing. The show would eventually be revived overseas in Wales, where it ran from 1993 to 1999, and it even saw a brief revival in 2012. Jeff Edwards, of course, was one of the best game show hosts of all time. He was very professional, very fun, and was also occasionally witty, and did so without eating the scenery. Whether it was a wacky skit show like Treasure Hunt, a video game show like Starcade, or even a lottery show like The Big Spin, Jeff was personable, fun, and he made the contestants feel at home. As for Mike Darrow, well, from what I've seen, he could be considered Jeff's Canadian counterpart, as he had many of the same qualities Jeff had. That being said, Jackpot was a truly unique game show, capable of entertaining and challenging kids and adults alike with its riddles and rhymes, and its enticing offer of big money and prizes, and there's no riddle to solve here. It gets a solid A. Now here's where I talk about how I'd revive the show if I had the chance. I wouldn't change too much about the main game, except of course I'd increase the prize money. The game would still have 16 contestants throughout the week, but the riddles would now be worth anywhere between $200 and $400 in increments of 10, and the jackpot would now have a starting value of $1,000. And if the king or queen of the hill could solve all 15 riddles without a miss and leave the jackpot riddle for last, the value of the jackpot would be doubled. The super jackpot would always be a random amount and would range from $20,000 to $50,000 in increments of 1,000. The target match, return trip, and prize riddles would all be brought back as well. And all contestants were guaranteed at least $300 in case they didn't get a chance to play during the week. Also, the player with the most cash at the end of the week won a brand new car all for themselves. I actually like the Riddlegrams bonus round, so you know what? I'll add it in my revival too. Basically, the king or queen of the hill and the riddle giver who solved the jackpot riddle would play the bonus round, and this time they'd play for $10,000. They'd get $500 for every riddlegram they got right if they fell short. As for the host, I'd go with somebody like Todd Newton, John Michael Higgins, Frank Nicotero, or my choice, Corey Michael Smith, aka the Riddler from Gotham. The announcer could be either Jim Thornton, Joey Fatone, or Burton Richardson. Anyway, that is my most recent episode of 15-Minute Game Show Reviews. And remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Gotta smash that like button. Give me more eyeballs. And follow me on Space Hay. I have to make keeping more videos of all kinds, and I hope you will keep watching. I would greatly appreciate it if you do. Anyway, I got a Halloween video coming out soon. Fingers crossed. And until next time, I'm Marty1983, and I am logging out of the Nerd Nest. So long.